We'll be wrapping up after this session, and we will be moving into reviews. So I am booking up fast. I'm a little overbooked, but if you want to have a review, I can review your level 1, I can review your level 2 this April. So make an appointment. We have that slides. If you actually go up to our new website on the right-hand side, there's a little button that says make an appointment. I think it says contact or for design and technical help. You can click those buttons and request an ID consult for Oscar, and then I can set you up. I can send you my schedule. A lot of you already have my Calendly link. The first one we have is 5:40. So we're jumping to the bottom of the rubric again. And learners have an opportunity to get to know the instructor. So we had talked about there's 1-1, 1-2, one of the level 6 ones about giving opportunity to students to get to know one another, having social presence in the class. So again, this is another one about social presence. So I pulled a whole bunch of social presence research for you for this one, and it is going to be in this PowerPoint. So you will be able to download this PowerPoint and click on the links and for the research that I pulled. Specifically, they now know that a sense of belonging in a class or a community is one of the keys to success. And so for us, that's for student success, student performance, student retention, right? That's our 3 biggies. So one of the articles, Garrison, Anderson, and Archer, they're doing a lot of work with the community of inquiry. They're doing a lot of work with undergraduate, the seven things for undergraduate success. So they have this really nice quote: social presence is the ability of learners to project their personal characteristics into a community of inquiry, thereby presenting themselves as real people. So being authentic is very important to generations, especially who have been exposed to enormous amounts of social media. Being an authentic person really builds trust between the viewer and the product. So for social influencers, they're looking to make authentic people so they can get more followers. The same thing works in a slightly different way in classrooms. They want you to be an authentic person, to be a real person with real life and real problems. And so in your online class, because of the lack of personal connection in the classroom, we need to make sure we create opportunities in which they will have an ability to actually know who you are, get to know you, get to know the real you more than just an icon instructor. So there are multiple ways to do this, and we're going to talk about this. Transactional distance. So here's another piece of the puzzle for retention in online courses. We have the sense of belonging. We also have transactional distance. And so there's a lot of research on transactional distance and modeling. So in this image, you see here, what it's basically talking about is the less that you speak in a class, the less the students feel attached, or there's a distance between you. The more you talk in the class, the more they feel connected to the class and the less transactional distance there is between you and the students, right? They feel like they belong. The more structure there is in the class, the more likely they feel distanced. The less structure in the class, the more they feel like it's real and authentic. So I know that's a little different that when we talk about having a really structured class with lots of a clean menu and lots of white space and a lot of very clear directions and checklists and videos, right? That's very structured. But what they're talking about is communicating with you, that your communication style is less structured to them, that you have genuine moments in your videos, that you make mistakes in your video, that you might say once in a while in your video, that makes you an authentic person to them. The second thing is for transactional distance is autonomy. The more autonomy you permit the student, the less attached they feel to the course. So when a correspondence course runs, you have a high level of autonomy, a low level of dialogue from the instructor, the person running, the facilitator, and you have a lot of very specific detailed instructions. So the transactional distance between the facilitator and the student is huge. They are then more likely to drop or withdraw from the class or just disappear than they are to continue the class. And that is for a large population, specifically first generation students, students of color, students with disabilities, some other minoritized populations, veterans. So the key here, again, for this sense of belonging, is that the more you talk to them, the more that you are authentic to them in your speech and communication, the more they will feel connected to the course and to you, and the longer they will persist in the course. The lower the amount of autonomy you give them, so you are giving them a plan, they're not on their own, you are closing and opening weeks, right? So you don't open the whole course in the beginning, you're opening week 1, then you open week 2, right on plan, right? You don't let them get ahead, you're keeping together as a cohort. The less autonomy you give them, the less the transactional distance, the more they feel like they're in a course. So we take the sense of belonging and we take this transactional distance, and we need to think about that and how we're designing our experiences to get the learners to feel like they're closer to us, that they persist longer and their performance is better. And they actually reach out to us when they have questions, right? A lot of time, you get those blank faces or empty email boxes. Nobody comes to your office hours, right? That's the transactional distance is appearing. Right. So you need to reach out, be very authentic about what's going on with the office hours, be very clear and make a plan, a little bit of plan for them, and then encourage them to come. So again, the sense of belonging, all this work really stems from Maslow's work in 1962, which probably most of you have seen before, and the need for belonging is one of the most important needs for all students to function well in all types of learning. So this isn't just for online. This is also for all different types of learning. And we have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you will see that sense of belonging is dead in the middle, right? So once they have their safety needs and they're comfortable in the class, they understand how the software works, they're looking for a sense of connection. If they don't have that sense of connection, it's difficult for them to continue to sort of become self-regulated in the course, become a really participant, and then you end up with people disappearing. So there's a couple things you can do right away. I have a survey. So this is a really nice little tool. SUNY created a survey for faculty, for instructors, facilitators, to measure their own presence in a course. So you can take this survey by SUNY, and it will give you some ideas about what's going on in the course here. And so I can open this up, and I'm just going to reshare the desktop here. And here's that. Everybody can see that. So here's this survey. It's going to ask you some information. They're actually doing a study about presence here, so you can actually participate in their study. They're going to ask you about fully online or blended. And this is just general, like if you're revising your course or if you're doing, they use it in multiple different workshops. So you can take this as well and go through it for the records. They'll give you some research links here of what they're doing as well for that. So you can actually take a look at what's going on in your course for presence. The next thing here is about Michelle Pacansky-Brock. So if you have not heard from Pacansky-Brock, this is your chance. She is amazing. So she's doing a lot of research about online. She has created a really interesting project that she's doing called humanization. And so the sense of belonging, being authentic, reducing the transactional distance is all wrapped up in this idea of we're humanizing the instructor. You may have heard that other places or read about it, humanizing the instructor. So Ansky Brock is working on a lot of this. And so I recommend this link. So it talks about humanizing the principles. It talks about the pedagogy behind humanizing. And again, we go to this trust, presence, awareness, empathy. She does a lot of work in DEI. She's got some great work on empathy. She also has great ideas. She has a specific humanizing the STEMs. So if you're in a STEM, she addresses how to do that specifically in the STEMs. And then she talks about inclusion and isolation in the classes. So she gives you a lot of great steps. There are 8 elements which she recommends that she's been working on. We will be working on liquid syllabus over the summer, thinking about how we're going to introduce that as a concept, a new sort of instructional strategy in your course. We'll be working that on the summer. But some of these things, right from Caring Campus, right? So this is where they're coming from, is this humanization work, making sure that the people feel welcome, giving them a survey, wise feedback, and we're going to talk specifically about that. So this link is going to get you there. She is in a community college, so she can relate to what we're doing, and she has some amazing work there. So let's talk about first one of these 8 things that she does. We're going to postpone liquid syllabus because her work is very early in that, and we're just seeing what's going on in that. So we're going to think about that over the summer. Is your icebreaker self-affirming? Are you reaffirming the identity of your students in your icebreaker? So what are we talking about? We're talking about giving the student a chance to share some important things about their identity, what they want to, right? We're not forcing them to show an image. We're not forcing them to tell us, where they live or, how long they've been going to school. But what we're doing is we want to affirm their identity by giving them a chance to share things in that icebreaker about themselves. So some of the recommendations that she has and that we recommend is always ask them to post a photo of a favorite object, place, or food. Michelle does a very specific icebreaker where she has the students pick an object and actually do a video as they explain what the object is and then why it's a favorite object to them, why they're going to keep it for the rest of their life. What does it mean? It makes the students compassionate towards each other. There's a lot of empathy, and the students really start talking and chatting with each other. Like, I remember that when I had a kid, I've been there, right? So there's a lot of chit chat going on and they feel connected. You could create a Google slide deck where each student created a slide that represents them. So that's something easy. You create a Google slide deck, you create one slide for each student, and then you share with them a link to the Google slide deck. Then they can work on their slide. You give them a week, and then after everybody, you put a little music to it. Everybody can watch it and learn a little bit about it. Google now is starting to integrate AI, so you can do text to speech, or they can actually narrate their slide as well. So there's a lot of things going on in Google Slides. I thought one that Michelle does was really interesting was an identity haiku. Have them write a haiku about their own identity and share it. So they can write how they're comfortable. Haikus are not very straightforward, so they can hide a lot of stuff. They don't have to be very forthcoming with this. And so these are some of those ideas. On the humanizing webpage, they have a lot more. If you look up, self-affirming icebreakers, you'll get a ton of links for icebreakers. So think beyond, just saying, what's your long-term goal? What does this course mean to you? Think about how they can really start chit-chatting. When I taught a few years ago, I did a icebreaker on please post an image of the superhero that is closest like you. And so they posted images of all these superheroes and explained why. And I had hundreds and hundreds of responses from the students talking and chatting to. I didn't even have to say anything. They just went, really had a great, fantastic conversation about which superhero they liked, which heroine. They talked about stereotyping. They talked about race, all that kind of things, all in the icebreaker. The second one of these ways to include ways to get to know you and you to get to know them is doing a pre-assessment. I am a pre-assessment believer. I do it all my courses. You take a pre-assessment. You can share things with the student in the pre-assessment, and they can share things with you. So they can share their pronouns, their nicknames. They can share whether they prefer audio or video feedback or just text. You can ask them about what are the challenges they have this semester to completing the course. How can you help them? What kind of services would you like a tutor? What are their long-term goals, their work schedules? So all of these things will help you get to know the student better and then be able to personalize your communication with the student, really get to know them back and forth. I highly recommend using a reflective journal throughout your course. Every few weeks, you post something. How's things going? How do you think? How have you grown in the course? What have you really learned? What have you found challenging? And that's a communication, right? That's a two-way communication tool. The student posts, and then you can post comments right back, and you can have a continual conversation throughout the semester with your students. Here are some other practices that we already do. We've already talked about our welcome videos and standard 1-1. We talk about warm instructor videos, which we have also talked about in previous OSCQR standards. Really opening up yourself, telling them about your educational struggles or your successes, telling about where you come from, what your hopes are for them, really giving them a good, strong intro, especially if you started off at a community college, right? Share those experiences with them. Schedule progress meetings once or twice throughout the semester with each of your students. So you're actually having a Zoom session, or they're coming to your office hours on campus to meet you and have conversation. How is it going? What do you feel challenging? What can I do? Would you like a tutor? I think I'm going to recommend a tutor. Here's how we're going to do that, right? So all these things can happen in the progress meeting, and then you could follow up through Starfish with them and flag certain things with any of those meetings, of course. Ask the students to create a course playlist. This is a big hit. Ask them to create a playlist on, Spotify or Pandora that students can play while they're studying. And you'll see how interactive they can be online when you ask them to do that. Start each week off with an inspiring quote or a poem that you read to them in your weekly video, right? Do something in your weekly video that is inspiring, right? Come up with something that you're doing to keep them going. Share your pets and screens, and that goes back with humanizing, right? If you make a mistake or you fumble in your video, keep it. That's humanizing you. Everybody fumbles. Everybody says, share your pets. It's okay if people walk through the room, introduce them, say, oh, this is my partner. And they can say, hi. And like, students adore that, right? It humanizes you as a person. You become real, especially pets. I've had instructors where students were upset because there was no pet in the weekly video, right? So they become attached to the pets. I had a faculty member who did a Saturday live session, optional, where he read the Saturday paper, and all the students would join because it was a free open chat where they discussed what was going on in business. The students loved it, and they showed up every time. And this particular person had students in Kenya and in Japan, and they all showed up every single time, even though one was at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And so there was all different time zones. They all really valued that time they had with that facilitated speaker, right? So OSCQR 648, we go back to ADA. Learners are informed when a timed response is required. Proper lead time is provided to ensure there's an opportunity to prepare an accommodation. We pretty much have this all in hand. All learners need clear guidance, right? We do that in our schedule where we say what things are due, when they open. We're very clear in our checklists, how long they have to make that. So there is a misconception that students must contact DSS at the beginning of the semester, and that is false. Students do not need to ask for an accommodation until they meet something in class where they actually need an accommodation. So a student who may be blind may not ask for an accommodation if you've really worked on your course accessibility until the middle of the course, when they just happen to run into something that they're having trouble with, right? So the students who ask for accommodation, there's a couple of things they have to do. They have to register with DSS, and they have to provide documentation, and they must go for an intake interview with them. So there's a couple of things you can do, right? Add an inclusive statement in your syllabus. Make sure that you mention disabilities, that students are included in that. Add an accommodation to your statement. Almost every single one of us, I'm sure every single one of us, has an accommodation paragraph in our syllabus. Personalize the accommodation statement. I highly recommend this. Leslie Kilgore is a great one for this. She personalizes and speaks to the students about what she really cares about and about them. And then she gives them sort of the accommodation blurb after a couple of notes from her. And again, accommodations can be taken any semester. They cannot take the accommodation until all the documentation is completed and an intake meeting. So DSS does reach out to every student that they are aware of and encourage them to register right at the beginning of the semester. But there are students that they have no idea are going to want accommodations or are eligible for accommodations. So you may indeed get a mid-semester accommodation for a student. So be prepared for those. Here's those references. So I pulled a couple of those references so you can take a look at that. I also pulled some Kansky-Brock so you can look up some of the articles that she has there, and another one on responsive teaching as well, which is an excellent article as well. So right now we're moving from our webinars, we're moving into our review phase. And here's the link for that. I can also give you the link. Let me grab that for you from the website. Pull that right up. And this is our new online website. And we go right into training, right into request an OSCQR of review.